3 days. She had been standing in that same doorway for 3 days. David Ward wiped the sweat from his forehead and handed the last food packet to a Peloran mother clutching two small children. The mother made a clicking sound that his translator turned into "blessings upon you" and shuffled away into the crowd. Sector 7 of Way Station 12 was always busy. Over 40,000 refugees lived in this section alone, packed into corridors and converted cargo bays. The air smelled of too many species living too close together. David had stopped noticing the smell months ago. What he could not stop noticing was the girl. She was Venery. That much was obvious from her pale blue skin and the large silver eyes that seemed to catch every flicker of light. She looked young, maybe 19 or 20 in human years. She wore the simple gray uniform of a junior diplomatic worker, and she watched him like he was the most interesting thing on the entire station. David had tried approaching her twice before. Both times, she had vanished into the shadows before he could get within 10 meters. Venery were fast when they wanted to be. He finished packing up his distribution cart and started pushing it toward the storage area. His muscles ached. 16 hours on his feet, and he still had reports to file before he could sleep. "She is still there," said Dr. Amara Obi, falling into step beside him. The doctor was a tall woman with kind eyes and hands that never seemed to stop moving. She had been working the refugee circuits even longer than David. "I know," David said. "Venery, do not interact with other species unless protocol demands it. This is strange behavior. Maybe she is just curious about humans." Amara shook her head. "Venery are not curious. They consider curiosity a waste of mental resources." She paused. "I have heard things about their section of the station. They keep it sealed. No other species allowed inside. Even the maintenance crews are turned away." David glanced back toward the doorway. The girl was gone again. That night, David could not sleep. He lay on his narrow cot in the human quarters and stared at the ceiling. Something about those silver eyes stayed with him. Not curiosity, Amara had said. So what was it? The answer came to him just before dawn. Feared he had seen fear in the eyes of 1,000 refugees from a dozen species. He knew what it looked like when a being was afraid but trying not to show it. The Venery girl had that same look, but what could a Venery diplomatic worker possibly have to fear on a neutral station? David found her the next day near the medical waste disposal unit. She was crouched behind a recycling bin, pulling something from the waste. When she saw him, she froze like a hunted animal. "Easy," David said softly, holding up his empty hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." She clutched the items to her chest. David could see what they were now: medicine packets, basic antibiotics, and vitamin supplements. Items the Venery medical staff had thrown away because they had been contaminated by alien touch. "Those are still good," David said. "Sealed packets. The contamination thing is not real, you know. Just cultural." The girl said nothing. Her silver eyes were wide, her breathing fast. "My name is David. David Ward. I work with the Humanitarian Corps. I help people." He took a slow step closer. "Do you need help?" For a long moment, she just stared at him. David could see her mind working behind those strange, beautiful eyes. She was calculating risks, weighing options, doing whatever cold Venery logic told her to do. Then something in her seemed to break. Her shoulders dropped. Her grip on the medicine packets loosened, and she spoke in a voice so quiet that David had to lean forward to hear. "I'm told humans help those who ask." "We try," David said, "even when there is no benefit, no trade, no obligation, especially then." She looked at him for a long time. David did not move. He did not push. He just waited, the way he had learned to wait with frightened children and traumatized survivors. "My name is Rilla," she finally said. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to speak to you. Everything I am doing is wrong according to my people." She took a shaky breath. "But I do not know who else to ask." "Ask what?" Rilla glanced around, checking for watchers. When she looked back at David, her silver eyes glistened with something that should have been impossible for her species: tears. "Not here," she whispered. "There are eyes everywhere. Ears in the walls. Administrator Gorth monitors everything." She pressed the medicine packets tighter against her chest. "These are not for me. There are others. Little ones. Hidden. They will die without help. David felt his heart begin to beat faster. How many? 17. Children. Rilla nodded. A single tear escaped and rolled down her blue cheek. She wiped it away quickly, as if ashamed. Where are they? David asked. I cannot tell you yet. I do not know if I can trust you. I do not know if I can trust anyone. She backed away slowly. But I will be watching. I will watch how you treat others. How you act when you think no one sees. And then perhaps, she turned and disappeared into the corridor before David could respond. He stood alone in the dim light of the waste disposal area, his mind racing. 17 children, hidden somewhere on this massive station. Venery children, kept secret from their own people. Why? David did not know yet, but he intended to find out. And somewhere deep in his gut, in that place where instinct lived, he already knew that whatever Rilla was about to tell him would change everything. Rilla watched him for 5 more days. David knew she was there even when he could not see her. He felt her gaze during food distributions, during medical assist runs, during the long hours he spent helping elderly refugees fill out relocation paperwork. He did not try to approach her again. He simply did his job and let her see who he really was. On the 6th day, she came to him. David was sitting alone in a quiet corner of the human mess hall, eating a cold sandwich and reviewing supply requests on his tablet. The hall was nearly empty. Most of the human staff were asleep or on shift. Rilla slipped into the seat across from him without a sound. You gave your food ration to a Kelleran child yesterday, she said. Your own meal. You went hungry so a stranger could eat. David shrugged. The kid was skinnier than me. You do not even know what species Kellerans are. You had never seen one before this station. Does that matter? Rilla studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find it. Her rigid posture relaxed just slightly. Come with me, she said. Now, before the shift change. We must not be seen together. David left his sandwich on the table and followed her. They moved through corridors he had never used before. Maintenance passages, emergency access tunnels, sections of the station that appeared on no public map. Rilla walked quickly but carefully, always listening, always watching. After 20 minutes, they reached a small storage room filled with broken equipment and old cargo containers. Rilla sealed the door behind them and activated a small device that hummed softly. Signal blocker, she explained. We have perhaps 15 minutes before security notices the dead zone and investigates. David leaned against a dusty container. Okay, I'm listening. Rilla stood very still in the center of the room. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She looked like she was about to step off a cliff. What do you know about my people? She asked. Venery, one of the older galactic species, known for logic, emotional control, and keeping to yourselves. Your territory borders the Keth Solari war zone, which is why there are so many of you on this station. Emotional control, Rilla repeated. Yes, that is what the galaxy sees. Cold, logical, efficient Venery, beings who feel nothing. She looked at him with those silver eyes. It is a lie. David waited. My people feel everything, Rilla continued. Every joy, every grief, every spark of love and flame of anger. We feel it all, deeper and stronger than most species can imagine. That is why our ancestors nearly destroyed our entire civilization in wars fueled by passion and rage. So you learned to suppress it. We did more than that. We made it a crime. Rilla's voice grew quieter. Centuries ago, our elders decided that emotion itself was the enemy. They developed genetic screening programs, chemical suppressants, neural conditioning. Generation after generation, they tried to breed the feeling out of us. But it did not work. No, it never works completely. Every generation, some children are born who feel despite everything. We call them defectives. The official term is genetic aberrations with compromised emotional regulation. She laughed bitterly. It sounds very clinical, very clean. David felt something cold forming in his stomach. What happens to these children? They are identified through mandatory testing before their 5th birthday. Then they're taken away. The official record says they are sent to special facilities for treatment. Rilla's hands began to tremble. The truth is they are killed. Quietly. Efficiently. Their parents are told they died of complications during treatment. Most parents accept this. Some are even relieved. A defective child brings shame to the entire family line. David's hands curled into fists. That is monstrous. That is normal. That is how it has been for 800 years. Rilla took a shaky breath. The 17 children I told you about. They are defectives. I have been smuggling them out of Venery space for 2 years. Hiding them. Moving them from station to station. Trying to find somewhere safe. And now you are here. On the station. With Administrator Gorath watching everything. Gorath is a true believer. He thinks the purging of defectives is sacred duty. If he finds those children. Rilla could not finish the sentence. David pushed off from the container and stood straight. Where are they? The children. Lower decks. Abandoned sections. Nobody goes there anymore. It is cold and dark, and the air recyclers barely function. But is safe. For now. What do you need? Food. Medicine. The youngest ones are getting sick. I have done everything I can, but I am not a doctor, and I am running out of supplies. Her voice cracked. I am running out of time. David nodded. I will help. I have access to humanitarian supplies. I can get what you need. Rilla stared at him. Just like that? No questions? No demands. You do not even know me. I know you are trying to save children from being murdered for the crime of having feelings. That is enough. Something shifted in Rilla's face. The careful mask of Venery control cracked, and beneath it David saw a young woman carrying a weight that would have crushed most beings. There is something else you should know, she said, about why I do this, why I risk everything. She reached up and touched a spot at the base of her skull, just above her neck. I was also defective. My mother hid me from the testers. She taught me how to fake the screening results. For 7 years, she kept me safe. What happened? Someone reported us. A neighbor who suspected the truth. Rilla's silver eyes filled with tears she did not try to hide. They came in the night. They took my mother. They said she had committed genetic treason. The punishment is public execution. David's throat tightened. Rilla, they made me watch. Her voice was barely a whisper now. They made me stand in the front row and watch as they killed her. I was 7 years old. I did not understand why she had to die. I did not understand any of it. The tears fell freely down her blue cheeks. But I remember her face in those last moments. She looked at me, and she smiled. No Venery is supposed to smile, David. We are not supposed to show any emotion at all. But she smiled at me because she loved me. She was about to die, and all she wanted was for me to know that she loved me. David stepped forward and did something that probably broke a dozen cultural protocols. He put his hand on Rilla's shoulder. I did not understand then, Rilla said. I understand now. She died so I could live, so I could grow up, so I could save others like me. She looked up at him with fierce determination burning through her tears. I will not let her sacrifice mean nothing. I will save those children or I will die trying. David squeezed her shoulder gently. You are not dying today, he said, and neither are those kids. I promise. The journey down took nearly 2 hours. David followed Rilla through passages that grew darker and colder with every level they descended. The walls here were old, covered in dust and neglect. The air tasted stale and metallic. Emergency lights flickered weakly every 50 meters, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Nobody comes here, Rilla said over her shoulder. The station masters declared these sections structurally unstable decades ago. They were wrong, but nobody bothered to check. Good place to hide. It was the only place to hide. They climbed through a broken ventilation shaft, squeezed past collapsed support beams, and finally reached a heavy door that looked like it had not opened in years. Rilla pressed her hand against a hidden panel, and the door slid aside with a grinding noise. Beyond was a large cargo bay that had been transformed into something else entirely. Makeshift beds lined the walls, assembled from salvaged mattresses and old thermal blankets. A small cooking area sat in one corner, heated by a jury-rig power cell. Dim lights hung from cables stretched across the ceiling. The space was cramped and worn, but it was clean. Someone had worked very hard to make it feel like a home. And everywhere David looked, he saw children point. 17 small faces turned toward him as he entered. 17 pairs of silver eyes went wide with fear. Some of the older ones scrambled to their feet, positioning themselves between David and the younger children. Others pressed against the walls, trying to disappear. "It is okay," Rilla said quickly, moving to stand beside David. "He is a friend. He is here to help." The children did not look convinced. They stared at David like he was a monster from their worst nightmares. He supposed that to them, he was an alien, a creature from outside their world. Everything they had been taught to fear. David crouched down slowly, making himself smaller. He kept his hands visible and his voice soft. "Hello," he said. "My name is David. I know I look strange to you. I know you have never seen anything like me before. But I promise I'm not going to hurt anyone. I just want to help." Silence. The children watched him with a mix of terror and curiosity. Then one of them moved. She was the smallest of the group, maybe 4 years old. Her pale blue skin was lighter than the others, almost white, and her silver eyes were enormous in her tiny face. She walked toward David with the unsteady steps of a child still learning to trust her legs. "Selly, no," one of the older children hissed, but Selly kept coming. She stopped right in front of David and looked up at him. "You are warm," she said. Her voice was soft and high. "I can feel it. You are warm inside." David did not know what to say. He felt something tightening in his chest. Selly reached out with one small hand and touched his palm. Her skin was cool against his, but her grip was firm. And then she smiled. It was not a big smile. Just a small curving of her lips, a brightening of her eyes. But it hit David like a punch to the heart that he had to turn away. He pretended to look at something on the wall while he blinked rapidly and got himself under control. When he turned back, Selly was still holding his hand. "You cry," she said. "Like us. The others say only defectives cry. But you're not defective. You are different. Humans cry when we feel things strongly," David managed to say. "Happy things. Sad things. It is normal for us." Selly tilted her head. "Normal to feel?" "Yes." She considered this information with the gravity only a small child could manage. Then she nodded as if she had just solved a great mystery. "I like normal," she decided. The other children began to relax. They did not exactly trust David yet, but they trusted Selly's judgment. Slowly, they crept closer. Questions began to tumble out of them. What was his planet like? Why was his skin that color? Did all humans have such strange flat faces? Did it hurt to have only 2 eyes? David answered every question as best he could. He told them about Earth, about mountains and oceans and forests. He told them about snow, which fascinated them endlessly. He told them about families and friends and the way humans live together. "Do humans hide children who feel?" asked a boy who looked about 10. "No," David said. "We celebrate them. Every child is precious to us, no matter how they feel or who they are." The children exchanged glances. The idea seemed impossible to them. Later, after the children had returned to their activities, Rilla sat beside David in a quiet corner. "Thank you," she said. They needed to see that not everyone in the galaxy wants them dead. "How long have you been down here?" 3 months this time. Before that, 6 months on a cargo hauler. Before that, a mining outpost. We never stay anywhere long. It is too dangerous." David looked at the children. 2 of them were drawing pictures on scraps of old packing material. 3 others were playing a quiet game with colored stones. Selly was curled up on a mattress, already asleep. "They are just kids," he said. "They laugh and play and draw pictures. They are completely normal. To your eyes, yes. To Venery eyes, they are abominations. Genetic failures. Proof that our species is still flawed." Rilla's voice was bitter. 800 years of breeding programs, and we still produce children who feel. The elders call it a disease that refuses to die. Maybe it is not a disease. Maybe it is the opposite. Maybe your people keep producing emotional children because that is what you are supposed to be. Rilla looked at him sharply. "That is heresy. That is truth." David turned to face her. "You told me your ancestors nearly destroyed themselves through passion and rage. But maybe the answer was not to eliminate feeling. Maybe it was to learn how to feel without destroying. And how will we do that? Humans have been figuring that out for thousands of years. We're not perfect at it. We still make terrible mistakes. but we keep trying." He gestured at the children. "These kids are not broken. They're the future your people threw away. And if you ask me, they might be the only thing that can save your species." Rilla was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. "I have never heard anyone talk about us that way. About defectives, I mean. We are taught from birth that we are wrong, sick, dangerous. Even I believed it for years. What changed?" She looked at Selly sleeping peacefully on her mattress. "I met a child who smiled at me the way my mother once did. And I realized that if this was sickness, it was the most beautiful sickness in the universe." She wiped her eyes quickly. "We need supplies, David. Food, medicine, blankets. The air recyclers down here are failing. Winter cycle is coming. The temperature will drop." David nodded. "I will bring everything I can carry. And I know someone who can help. A doctor. Dr. Amara Obi. She is good. She is trustworthy. Can she keep a secret? She has been keeping secrets for refugees for 20 years. Trust me." Rilla hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but be careful. Gorath has eyes everywhere. If he finds out what you're doing, he will not find out." But even as David said the words, he knew the risk they were taking. Every supply he moved would leave a trace. Every trip down here was another chance to be followed. Gorath was watching. Sooner or later, he would notice something wrong. David just had to make sure the children were safe before that happened. 3 weeks passed faster than David thought possible. He fell into a routine. During his regular shifts, he worked the refugee sectors like always, distributing food and supplies, helping with medical runs, filling out endless paperwork. At night, when most of the station was asleep, he made his trips down to the lower levels. Dr. Amara Obi joined him after the first week. She had listened to his story without interruption, asked exactly 3 questions, and then started packing medical supplies into her bag. "You could lose your position for this," David had warned her. "I became a doctor to help children," Amara had replied. "If helping children is a crime, then I am guilty." Together, they carried down food, medicine, blankets, and portable air scrubbers. Amara examined each child carefully, treated their illnesses, and taught Rilla basic medical procedures for emergencies. The children adored her. They called her Warm Hands because she always rubbed her palms together before touching them. David found himself looking forward to those late-night visits more than anything else in his life. The children had stopped being afraid of him. They ran to greet him when he arrived. They showed him their drawings and told him stories and asked endless questions about Earth. Selly had claimed him as her special friend. She followed him everywhere, held his hand whenever possible, and insisted on showing him every small treasure she had collected. Interesting stones, bits of colored wire, a feather she had found somewhere. "Where did you get this?" David asked, examining the feather. It was deep blue with silver edges. "A bird lived here once," Selly said seriously. "Before us. It left this for me." David did not have the heart to tell her that no bird had ever lived in the lower decks of a space station. He just smiled and told her it was beautiful. "You can have it," Selly said, "to remember me. I do not need a feather to remember you, but you might forget. People forget. That is what Rilla says." David tucked the feather carefully into his pocket. "I will never forget you. I promise." It was during the 4th week that Administrator Gorath called David to his office. The Venery administrator was tall and thin, with skin so pale it was almost gray. His silver eyes held no warmth. His voice was flat and precise. "David Ward," Gorath said, not offering a seat. "Humanitarian coordinator. Former emergency medical technician from Earth. Currently assigned to sectors 4 through 7. That is correct. You have been very busy lately." Gorath pulled up a holographic display. Numbers and charts floated in the air between them. "Requisition forms show you have been drawing more supplies than your sectors require. Medical packets, food rations, thermal equipment. The numbers do not match your distribution reports." David had prepared for this moment. He kept his voice casual. "Clerical errors, mostly. The new tracking system has been glitchy since they updated it last month. I have submitted correction forms." "Have you?" "3 times, actually. The system keeps losing them." Gorath studied him with those cold silver eyes. David forced himself to meet the gaze without flinching. I have also noticed you working unusual hours, Gorith continued. Late nights, early mornings, sections of the station far from your assigned areas. Refugees do not keep convenient schedules. I go where I am needed. Admirable dedication. The word sounded like an insult. Tell me, Mr. Ward, do you know what happens to those who interfere with very internal matters? I'm afraid I do not follow. Of course you do not. Gorith waved his hand, dismissing the holographic display. You may go. For now. David walked out of the office with his heart pounding. Gorith knew something. He did not have proof yet, but he was suspicious. The clock was ticking. That night, David told Rilla about the meeting. We need to move faster, she said. Her face was pale with worry. Gorith does not make accusations without evidence. If he is asking questions, he is already building a case. Can we move the children? Where? This is the only safe place on the station. And I cannot get them off station without transit documents they cannot have. They sat in heavy silence. Around them, the children slept peacefully, unaware of the danger closing in. There has to be something, David said. Some law, some loophole. Venery law gives absolute authority over Venery citizens to Venery administrators. On this station, that is Gorith, there is no appeal. What about non-Venery law? Galactic Compact provisions? Rilla shook her head. I have studied every relevant code. Nothing protects children of a species from their own government. The galaxy considers it an internal matter. David wanted to hit something. The unfairness of it burned in his chest. It is Selly's birthday tomorrow, Rilla said quietly. She has been talking about it for weeks. She has never had a birthday celebration before. Venery do not celebrate birthdays. We mark the year of birth for record-keeping purposes. But celebration is emotional behavior. It is discouraged. David thought for a moment. Then he smiled. Let me handle it. The next night, David arrived with a small cake he had begged from the human mess hall kitchen. It was lopsided and the frosting was uneven, but it was real cake with real sugar, something most of the children had never tasted. He had also brought candles. You put fire on food? One of the older boys asked, amazed. It is tradition. You make a wish and blow out the candles. If you blow them all out at once, your wish comes true. Selly stared at the cake like it was made of pure magic. Her silver eyes reflected the tiny flames. What do I wish for? She whispered. Anything you want, but you cannot tell anyone, or it will not come true. Selly closed her eyes tight. Her small face was so serious, so full of hope. Then she took a deep breath and blew. All 4 candles went out at once. The children cheered. It was a small sound, carefully quiet so it would not carry, but it was pure joy. As David handed out slices of cake, he noticed Rilla standing apart from the group. She was watching the children with tears streaming down her face. Rilla, are you okay? She laughed through her tears. They are laughing, David. They are laughing, and it is not a crime. They are celebrating, and no one is going to punish them. She could not finish, David understood. For these children, a simple birthday party was revolutionary. It was proof that their feelings were not wrong. That joy was not sickness. That they deserved to be happy. Later, after the cake was gone and the children were asleep, David found a small piece of paper tucked into his pocket. Selly must have slipped it there. It was a drawing. Simple lines made with colored stylus on scrap material. 2 figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. One figure was small and blue. The other was tall with brown skin and flat features, HT the bottom. In shaky letters, Selly had written, David and me. David stared at the drawing for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket next to the blue feather. He did not know that at that exact moment, Administrator Gorith was opening a storage bay on the far side of the station. He did not know that Gorith had found the cache of supplies David had hidden there. And he did not know that Gorith was now holding a small piece of paper he had found among the supplies. A drawing made by a child who should not exist, showing a picture of a human holding her hand under a yellow sun. Rilla knew something was wrong the moment she entered Administrator Gorith's office. 2 Venery security officers stood by the door. They did not look at her, but their presence spoke volumes. This was not a routine meeting. Gorith sat behind his desk, perfectly still. His silver eyes tracked her movement as she approached. On the desk in front of him lay a single piece of paper, Selly's drawing. Rilla's blood turned to ice. Junior, attaché Rilla, Gorith said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. Please sit. She sat. There was nothing else to do. I've been reviewing some interesting data, Gorith continued. Supply discrepancies. Unusual movement patterns in the lower station sections. Communication blackouts that someone has been very careful to hide. He tapped the drawing with one long finger. And this charming piece of artwork, found in a human relief worker's storage cache. Rilla said nothing. Her mind raced through options, escape routes, anything. There were none. I know about the children, Gorith said. I have known for nearly 2 weeks. I wanted to see how deep this conspiracy went. Now I know. He leaned forward. 17 defectives hidden in the abandoned sectors. 2 years of illegal smuggling across Venery borders. And you, the daughter of a genetic traitor, at the center of it all. My mother was not a traitor. Your mother was executed for harboring a defective. The law is clear. The punishment is clear. And now you have repeated her crime 17 times over. Rilla lifted her chin. Those children have done nothing wrong. They did not choose how they were born. The defective gene is a corruption of our species. It must be eliminated for the good of all Venery. This is not cruelty. It is necessity. Gorith's voice never changed. It remained flat, logical, utterly certain. You were given a chance to live despite your own defect. The neural dampener was supposed to correct your aberration. Clearly, it failed. The dampener did not fail. I removed it. Something flickered in Gorith's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or disgust. Then you have made your choice. He pressed a button on his desk. Security will escort you to detention. The children will be collected and processed according to protocol. You will witness their return to the source before your own execution. It is traditional for the primary offender to observe the consequences of their actions. The security officers moved toward her. Wait, Rilla said. I will tell you where they are. I will cooperate fully. Just give me time to say goodbye. Gorith studied her for a moment. A request for emotional closure. How appropriate for a defective. He nodded to the guards. You have 1 hour. Then it ends. They took her to a small holding cell. Rilla waited until the guards sealed the door, then pulled out the emergency communicator David had given her. It was tiny, hidden in a false tooth. She had never used it before. David, she whispered into it. They know. Gorith knows everything. They are coming for the children. 1 hour. Static crackled. Then David's voice came through, tight with fear. I'm on my way. Do not give up. I have a plan. He did not have a plan, but he would make one. David ran. He sprinted through corridors, dodging refugees and station workers, ignoring the shouts behind him. His mind worked frantically. 1 hour. 17 children. No transit documents. No way off the station. He reached the human sector and burst into Dr. Amara Obi's quarters. Gorith found out, he gasped. We have less than an hour. Amara did not waste time on questions. She grabbed her medical bag and followed him. They reached the lower decks in record time, taking risks they had always avoided before. Speed mattered more than caution now. The children were awake when they arrived. They could sense something was wrong. Selly ran to David and grabbed his hand. What is happening? She asked. Where is Rilla? We have to move. Right now. Everyone pack only what you can carry. The older children began helping the younger ones. Within minutes, they were ready. David led them through the maintenance tunnels, taking a different route than before. This path led toward the human sector, toward the one place on the station that Venery Authority did not fully reach. They were halfway there when David heard the sound he had been dreading. Boots on metal. Security patrols, sweeping the lower levels. This way, Amara whispered, guiding them into a narrow ventilation shaft. They crawled in darkness, the children silent with terror. David could hear Selly's small breaths behind him, quick and frightened. He wanted to comfort her, but there was no time. They emerged in a service corridor near the human medical bay. David could see the entrance to the quarantine ward just ahead. If they could reach it, they might have a chance. Almost there, he said. Just a little further. That was when the lights went red. alarm klaxon screamed. Emergency bulkheads began to descend. The station's security system was locking down the sector. "Run!" David shouted. They ran. Children stumbled and fell. David scooped up Selly. Amara grabbed two others. The older kids helped the younger ones, pulling them along with desperate strength. They made it through the quarantine ward doors with seconds to spare. The bulkhead slammed down behind them, sealing them inside. Amara immediately began converting the ward into a hiding place. She pulled out medical scanners and fake patient files. Within minutes, the children were lying in beds, hooked up to monitoring equipment, disguised as patients with a highly contagious alien infection. "This will not fool them for long," Amara said. "It does not need to." David pulled out his tablet and began typing rapidly. "I just need to buy us time to file the paperwork." "What paperwork?" "Galactic Compact, Article 47, Section 12. Any being who requests human protection on humanitarian grounds is entitled to a formal hearing before the Galactic Council before any action can be taken against them." Amara stared at him. "You memorized the Galactic Compact?" "Just the useful parts." David finished typing and submitted the form. "There. It is official. These children have formally requested asylum under human protection. Gorith cannot touch them until the Council rules. Will the Council rule in their favor?" David looked at the children lying in the beds. Selly was watching him with those huge silver eyes. The blue feather he had given back to her was clutched in her small fist. "I do not know," he admitted, "but it is their only chance." 20 minutes later, Administrator Gorith arrived at the quarantine ward with a full security detail. His face was as expressionless as ever, but David could see the cold fury in his eyes. "You have interfered in Venery internal affairs," Gorith said through the intercom. "This is a serious violation of diplomatic protocol." "These children have requested human protection," David replied. "Under Galactic Compact Article 47, they are entitled to a hearing before any action is taken. You know the law as well as I do, Administrator. Venery law takes precedence over compact provisions for Venery citizens. Not when asylum has been formally requested. The Council must decide." David met Gorith's gaze through the glass. "You can wait, or you can start a diplomatic incident by forcing entry into a human quarantine zone. Your choice." Gorith was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to his security detail. "Seal the area. No one enters or exits. We will wait for the Council's decision." He looked back at David. "You have delayed the inevitable. Nothing more." "Maybe," David said, "but I have also given them hope. And hope is something your people tried to kill a long time ago. It does not stay dead." Gorith walked away without another word. Inside the ward, Selly tugged on David's sleeve. "Are we safe?" she whispered. David knelt down and took her hand. "Not yet," he said honestly, "but we're going to fight for you. All of us. And humans do not give up easily." Selly considered this. Then she nodded solemnly. "Neither do I," she said. The hearing chamber was full. Representatives from 12 species had gathered to witness the proceedings. Peloran diplomats sat beside Keth observers. Human officials from the Humanitarian Corps occupied an entire section. Even a few Solari had come. Watching with their strange, multifaceted eyes, at the center of it all stood Administrator Gorith, his gray robes perfect, his silver eyes cold. And across from him stood David Ward, a former paramedic from Montana who had never argued a case in his life. The council speaker, an ancient being whose species David did not recognize, called the session to order. "We are here to determine the status of 17 Venery juveniles who have requested asylum under human protection. Administrator Gorith represents the Venery government. Coordinator David Ward represents the petitioners." The speaker's voice echoed through the chamber. "Administrator, you may present your case." Gorith stepped forward with perfect composure. "The facts are simple. 17 Venery children were illegally removed from Venery jurisdiction. They suffer from a well-documented genetic condition that compromises emotional regulation. Venery law requires that such individuals be processed for the protection of our society. This is an internal matter. The Galactic Compact has no authority over the genetic policies of member species. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several representatives nodded. The argument was technically correct. Furthermore, Goreth continued, the human coordinator has violated multiple diplomatic protocols by harboring Venery citizens and interfering in Venery affairs. I request that the children be returned to Venery custody immediately and that appropriate sanctions be placed on the humans involved. The speaker turned to David. Coordinator Ward? David's mouth was dry. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him. He thought of Selly and her blue feather. He thought of Rilla, still in detention, awaiting whatever came next. He thought of his sister, who had died too young, and how helpless he had felt then. Not this time. I'm not a lawyer, David began. I'm not a diplomat. I am just a relief worker who has seen too much suffering to stay silent. He took a breath. Administrator Goreth calls these children defective. He says they suffer from a condition. But I spent weeks with these kids. I have watched them laugh and play and cry and hope. They're not defective. They're the most normal children I have ever met. Normal by human standards, perhaps, Goreth interjected. Not by Venery standards. Then maybe Venery standards are wrong. The chamber went silent. No one spoke to a Venery elder that way. David continued. The Venery have spent 800 years trying to eliminate emotion from their species. But every generation, children like these are born. You call it disease. I call it your people refusing to surrender their own hearts. He turned to face the assembly. I have a witness who can speak to this better than I can. I request permission to call Rilla, currently in Venery detention. Goreth's eyes narrowed. The prisoner is not relevant to these proceedings. She is the only one who can explain what these children really are. The council deserves to hear her testimony. The speaker considered this. Request granted. Bring the prisoner. Minutes later, Rilla entered the chamber, escorted by guards. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were clear. She walked to the witness, stand with her head held high. State your name and position, the speaker said. My name is Rilla. I was a junior diplomatic attaché. I am also what my people call a defective. She reached up to the base of her skull. For 12 years, I have worn a neural dampener to suppress my emotions. It is standard treatment for those of us who are allowed to live. Her fingers found a small switch. Today, I am removing it. Rilla, do not, Goreth warned. She pressed the switch. The effect was immediate. Rilla gasped as if surfacing from deep water. Tears sprang to her eyes. Her whole body trembled. I had forgotten, she whispered. I had forgotten what it felt like to feel. The assembly watched in stunned silence. No one had ever seen a Venery cry before. My mother was executed when I was 7 years old, Rilla said, her voice shaking but strong. Her crime was loving me too much to let them kill me. They made me watch her die. They thought it would teach me that emotion is dangerous. Instead, it taught me that love is worth dying for. She turned to face the council directly. My people call love a disease. They call compassion weakness. They call hope delusion. Her silver eyes swept across the chamber. But I have seen a human man work 18 hours without rest to feed children he never met. I have watched him weep for my pain as if it were his own. I have seen him risk everything, his career, his freedom, his life, for 17 children who meant nothing to him except that they needed help. Her voice grew stronger. If this is disease, then I am sick. If this is weakness, then I am weak. And if hope is delusion, then let me be deluded until my last breath. She placed her hand over her heart. Because I would rather feel everything and die than feel nothing and call it living. The chamber was utterly silent. Then, slowly, the human section began to applaud. The Pelorans joined them, their clicking sounds blending with the clapping. Soon, half the assembly was showing approval. The speaker raised a hand for silence. The council will deliberate. They did not deliberate long. 20 minutes later, the speaker announced the decision. By a vote of 9-3, the council grants asylum to the 17 Venery juveniles. They will be remanded to human custody and relocated to a human colony world of their choosing. Administrator Goreth's request for sanctions is denied. David felt his knees go weak. Around him, the human delegation erupted in cheers. Goreth stood perfectly still. His face showed nothing, but David could see the cold fury burning in his eyes. "This is not over," Gorith said quietly as he passed David. "Your species has made an enemy today." "We have made plenty of enemies by doing the right thing," David replied. "We will manage." 6 months later, David stood in the sunshine on a human colony world called New Harmony. The colony had been settled 30 years ago by families seeking a quiet life away from Earth's crowded cities. Rolling green hills stretched to the horizon. The sky was a soft purple, lit by twin suns, and running across those hills, laughing and playing, were 17 Venery children who had never known freedom before. Selly spotted David first. She sprinted toward him with her arms outstretched. "David, David, you came." He caught her in a hug, lifting her off her feet. She was heavier now, healthier. Her blue skin had gained color. Her silver eyes sparkled with joy. "I promised I would visit," he said. "I knew you would keep your promise." "You always do." He set her down, and she grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the small house where the children lived. Rilla stood in the doorway, watching them approach. She looked different without the neural dampener, softer somehow, more alive. "Thank you," she said as he reached her. "For everything. You did the hard part. I just filed some paperwork." She smiled. It was a real smile, unreserved and warm. "You know that is not true." David shrugged. "Maybe, but I got a pretty good deal out of it." "What deal?" He looked at Selly, still holding his hand. He looked at the other children playing in the sunshine. He looked at Rilla, standing in the doorway of a home that had once seemed impossible. "I got a family," he said. Later, after dinner and stories and games, after the children had finally gone to sleep, Rilla asked David the question everyone asked. "Why did you do it? Why risk everything for children you did not know?" David thought about it for a long moment. He had been asked this question many times. He had given many different answers, but the truth was simpler than any of them. Because they needed help, and I could help. That is all the reason I have ever needed. Rilla was quiet for a while. Then she nodded. "That is why humans are the strangest species in the galaxy," she said. "You do not need a reason to be kind. You simply are." David smiled. "I suppose we are," he said. Outside, the twin suns set slowly over the hills. Somewhere in the house, a child murmured in peaceful sleep, and in a pocket over his heart, David carried a blue feather and a child's drawing, reminders of the day a frightened girl had asked him for help. She had asked him for help, and what she said next had shattered him. But some things need to break before they can become whole.